Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a bit different, really special actually. Instead of our usual focus on one piece of research, we're exploring a whole landscape of local history. And this is all thanks to the work being done by K. Brad Barfield of Ashley County Now.
That's right. K-Brad reached out, and it sounds like a fantastic project they've got going on.
Yeah.
They've compiled this collection of 25 essays. They come from Frankie Denson's Hill Scrapbook.
Okay.
And Ashley County Now is actually sharing these one by one with their Facebook audience over, I think, 25 days. A really neat way to bring local history to life online.
Absolutely. And this scrapbook, think of it like a time capsule, right?
Yeah.
Preserving Ashley County's past.
Exactly.
And the story of how it got here is interesting, too. It was found in the Tim Hollis Collection. And now K. Brad is digitizing it, bringing it into the present. It just shows you how vital folks like K. Brad and the local history groups are for keeping these community stories going.
It really does. And what these essays give you, the listener, isn't just, dry facts. It's a really close look at everyday life back then.
Yeah.
What school was like, the memories people held on to. It's almost like getting a personal tour through Fountain Hill's history.
Precisely. And the time frame here is pretty broad, starting way back in 1842 and stretching into the mid-20th century, even beyond.
So a lot to cover.
A really rich history that Ashley County Now is helping to share. Okay, so where should we start? How about with the Denson family? Their name seems to pop up a lot.
Good starting point. Essay 7 covers this, 1842, when the Densons arrived. And the key thing, Thomas C. Denson got there before Ashley County even existed.
Wow. Okay, so he was truly an early settler.
Right at the beginning. And he was a veteran War of 1812. So it's likely he got a land grant, which was pretty common then.
Makes sense. A way to encourage settlement.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he had more in mind than just, clearing some land for himself.
He definitely did. The essay really points to his vision for building a community, not just a farm. And you see that clearly in 1851. He set aside 3 acres specifically for the Fountain Hill Academy.
3 acres, that's a pretty significant move, especially that early on. Shows education was a priority from the get-go.
It really does. And like you said, the Denson name, it just keeps appearing. Principals, graduates.
Frankie Denson himself, the guy who made the scrapbook.
Exactly. It really drives home their long-term commitment. They weren't just passing through, they helped build the place, especially its educational foundations.
It makes you think, doesn't it, how the vision of those very first people can echo down through generations in a community. Something for you to consider about your own town's roots.
Definitely.
Okay, let's look at Essay 1, a schoolhouse on the edge of the prairie. This picks up right there, with the academy getting incorporated in 1851. And it paints a picture of early education being, pretty sparse.
Oh, yeah. Very sparse. Only 2 teachers for the whole of White Township at the start.
2 teachers.
D.D. Sims and John D. Colborn. And get this, they actually boarded with Thomas Denson.
No way. That just shows how interconnected everything was. Small community, tight bonds.
Absolutely. And the school site itself changed over the years, but the focus on education continued. You see this lineage of educators mentioned the McDermotts, Martin Van Buren Sparks, W.F. Mack.
W.F. Mack, his time there was cut short, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. Interrupted by the Civil War. It's a stark reminder for you of how these huge historical events ripple down and affect everything, even a small-town school.
Like later disruptions, maybe WWII, things like that?
Exactly. The essay draws that parallel. There's this theme of resilience, but also of these unavoidable interruptions.
And it really highlights how tied together everything was back then. The land, the work people did, and trying to get some schooling in.
They were inseparable. But there's another layer later on. The essay mentions a black church in school being built on the original academy land.
And issues with the land title.
Yeah, apparently because of restrictions from the 1850s deed. It points to those longer-term complexities, especially around land and race.
Right. What strikes me about this essay, though, is the title itself, Edge of the Prairie. Doesn't sound romanticized.
No, it doesn't. It feels very grounded. As the essay says, it focuses on the origin, not nostalgia. It roots the whole story in that frontier reality, makes the progress later seem even more significant for you.
Okay, let's jump forward a bit. Essay 16. The flu, the fever, and a few runaways. This brings us into the 20th century and some different kinds of challenges.
Right. The 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. That hit Fountain Hill too, just like everywhere else. Schools had to close.
A reminder that even rural places weren't isolated from global events.
Not at all. But it wasn't just the pandemic. The essay talks about other, more everyday struggles.
Like the runaways, what was that about?
Runaway horses. Imagine Mr. Thurston Oliver's buggy taking off on him. And there was another accident involving 3 Mrs. Denson in their buggy.
Wow. Just the hazards getting around back then. Things you don't really worry about now.
Exactly. So you have this big public health crisis alongside these very local personal dramas. But the key takeaway seems to be resilience. Life went on, school went on, despite it all.
They kept going. Okay, now for a big step up. Essay 22. A Dream in Hilo Plate and Plaster, the $4,000 Schoolhouse of 1916. This sounds like a major milestone.
Oh, absolutely. A $4,000 school in 1916. That was a huge investment for a community like Fountain Hill.
Yeah.
It really signals their ambition for education.
And the details in the newspaper article, they planned seating capacity, storm sheathing. What else?
Plaster walls, metal ceilings, and these hilo plate blackboards.
Hilo Plate, never heard of it.
Me neither, but it sounds fancy for the time.
Right.
Like top-of-line blackboards. It shows that they weren't just building a school, they were aiming for a good school.
Right. Quality facilities.
And the community was right there behind it. They formed a school improvement association in 1917, held a box supper fundraiser to get money for the auditorium furnishings. It shows real buy-in, real community ownership,
Definitely. A collective effort. Which leads us nicely into Essay 2, The Bright Years, V.S. Bright, and the Smith-Hughes era. Another pivotal figure, it seems.
Very much so. V.S. Bright arrives in 1919. He's one of the early teachers under the Smith-Hughes Act.
Okay, the Smith-Hughes Act, that was federal law, right? Promoting vocational education.
Exactly. Passed in 1917. A big push for practical skills, especially in rural areas like Fountain Hill. Bright was putting that into action locally.
And he oversaw building another new schoolhouse.
Yes, a 5-room, 2-story building this time. But it was more than just the building. This era saw consolidation.
Bringing smaller schools together.
Right. Places like Milo, Welch, Pine Grove, Gardner. They all became part of the Fountain Hill district, centralizing things.
But Bright's vision was specific, wasn't it? Focused on practical learning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He championed vocational agriculture and home economics.
Yeah.
Not just as electives, but as central. Things like livestock, soil science, sewing, even welding. He believed in learning by doing, connecting education directly to the students' lives and the land they lived on.
And the community supported this.
Seems so. There's a story about a town meeting in 1919 where people pledged donations. It shows they embraced his approach. His impact was clearly huge, remembered for decades. Makes you think about how one person's vision can really steer a community's path in education.
For sure. Okay, let's dig a bit deeper into that consolidation idea with Essay 5, from one room to consolidation.
Right. This essay really contrasts the old system, all those scattered, often handmade one-room schools, with the new consolidated model.
And Fountain Hill was kind of ahead of the curve on this, consolidating 5 schools in 1929, 1930.
Yeah, it was a statewide push in the late 20s, but Fountain Hill seems to have jumped in pretty early and ambitiously.
Must have been a logistical nightmare, though. 5 buses covering over 100 miles every day.
Oh, I bet. And you can imagine parents worrying about their kids traveling further, maybe losing that small neighborhood school feel.
Sure, there are always trade-offs.
Definitely. But the essay points out the gains. Potentially better teachers, a wider range of subjects, actual indoor plumbing, libraries, gyms, things the small schools just couldn't offer.
So Fountain Hill became a much bigger educational hub in the county.
Pretty much. Though it's good the essay also mentions the schools that got left out of the official record, like Brown School and Poltite. It reminds you that consolidation meant some local histories might fade.
That's a really important point for you, the listener, to remember. Progress isn't always simple, but in Fountain Hill, consolidation clearly boosted those practical subjects Bright championed.
Yes, it helped bring ag and home ec right to the forefront.
Which brings us to Essay 3, The Brick That Built a Town. This is about the 1930 brick schoolhouse, right? Sounds iconic.
Totally iconic. The essay calls it a monument, a marker of time. People literally dated events by it before the brick school, after the brick school.
That really tells you how central it was, and there's that weird little mystery about it being 10 feet shorter than planned.
Yeah. Isn't that great? Just a little quirk in the history makes it feel more real.
It does. And the details classrooms, those hilo plate blackboards again.
A gym, a separate ag and home ec building. Wait, is this the one with the goats?
I think so. Goats on the second floor of the ag building. You just don't forget a detail like that.
Definitely not. And the library was tucked away in the Masonic Lodge's anteroom. We'll hear more about the librarian Irma Watkins Mears later.
Oh, and that story about the young woman running the boarding house for the bricklayers.
Yeah, pregnant, 21 years old.
Yeah.
And the kindness of the Peck Masons who worked on the school. It really brings the whole construction project to life, the human side of it.
It really does. And the fact that those same bricks were used for Eden Baptist Church when the school came down in 74, it's like the building lived on.
A connection between education and faith, built from the same foundation. That school clearly anchored the town for generations.
Speaking of anchors, let's talk about the Masons. Essay 13, The Masons of Pyron Lodge, number 669.
Right, another cornerstone of the community. And their lodge room was literally above the Ag and Home Ec building, physically central.
And their role went beyond just lodge meetings, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. The essay talks about them upholding standards, helping vulnerable folks, kind of setting a moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
And they were involved in the school from early on, school board, committees, fundraising, real civic engagement.
And their building housed the library, too, right? In the anteroom.
Yep, the Fountain Hill branch of the Ashley County Library, with Irma Watkins Mears running it. It just shows how intertwined these different community pillars were.
They seem like this quiet, steady force holding things together. Which leads us to Irma Watkins Mears herself in Essay 20, the quiet librarian of Fountain Hill.
Yeah, it's a lovely tribute. Fountain Hill didn't have some big fancy library building. It was just that space in the Masonic anteroom.
But Mrs. Mears made it important.
Exactly. It wasn't about the size. It was about her. The essay says she really knew her readers, matched them with the right books, that personal touch.
Like a literary matchmaker for the town. You can imagine how much that meant, having someone guide you to stories and knowledge.
Absolutely. It captures the memory of that small space, how much impact it had. A good reminder for you that big things can happen in small places.
Definitely. Okay, let's shift to another dedicated space. Essay 17, The Home Economics Cottage Teaching Girls to Build the Future, built in 1940.
Yes, with WPA support, which is significant during the Depression era. This wasn't just about teaching cooking and sewing, though.
No, it sounds much broader. Household budgets, canning, blending tradition with new skills.
Right. It was about building confidence, giving girls practical skills for managing a home, finances, everything. Especially important for girls coming in from the more rural areas.
Empowering them for modern life, in a way.
I think so. And there's that great detail about the final exam, preparing a whole meal, setting the table properly, very hands-on.
You can just picture it. It really feels like this cottage helped bridge rural life into, well, modernity for these young women. And it was a community effort to make it happen.
During tough times, too. Okay, ready for something completely different?
Hit me.
Essay 4. She caught the football.
Oh, this sounds fun. I remember reading about this. Fountain Hill was big on basketball.
Right, proud tradition there. But in 1930, Coach Herbert Boothby gets the idea to start a football team. First one ever.
But they were short on players.
Very short. So short, they recruited ringers, grown men who weren't even students. Clyde High, Dude Brown.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but the she in the title.
That's the best part. They were so short on players, girls actually practiced with the team.
No kidding.
Yep. There's an anecdote about one girl getting her chest bruised, another ripping her skirt during practice. They just jumped in to help make up the numbers.
That's amazing. Talk about community spirit.
Totally. The essay stresses it was more about the fun, the travel, the experience, not really about the scores, just a unique, memorable team for everyone involved.
A story you tell for years. Now, the girls did have their own official triumphs, right? Essay 6, 1932 girls basketball champions mustard, yellow, and grit.
Oh, yeah. This is a fantastic story of grit, just like the title says. They had homemade uniforms. Mustard yellow.
Mustard yellow. Okay.
They had to do their own fundraising, probably didn't have the resources the boys' teams did, but they dominated. Won the 1932 county championship.
Wow. Under Coach Boothby again?
Yep, Herbert Boothby coached them too. There's a team photo mentioned, right, and the story of Mildred Forrester Hobbs making it into the Ashley County Hall of Fame years later.
That's wonderful. A testament to their toughness.
It really is. The essay hints at maybe some unfairness in resources, but the main story is their resilience and how they just flat out won. A real story of triumph for you to appreciate.
Love it. Okay, moving forward in time again. Essay 19, The 1947 Frontier building a modern school in the Pines. What's the Frontier reference about?
It's the name of the school annual that year, the Frontier, and it seems symbolic. By 1947, the consolidated district was thriving, multiple buildings, buses running.
Right.
They were expanding the campus, buying more land. The graduating class was a decent size. They had plans for a modern gym. It felt like they were really building something for the future, pushing forward.
So the school represented the community's identity, its investment in progress.
Exactly. Established vocational tracks, academics, the library.
Yeah.
It was a fully formed educational center by then, a symbol of what they'd built.
Okay, let's step outside the school grounds for a bit. How did people get around, connect with the outside world? Essay 14, when the ALM Railroad whistled through.
Ah, the railroad. Hugely important. The Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi Railroad connected Fountain Hill in a way nothing else could back then.
Mail, goods, people.
Everything. It brought the outside world in and let people travel out. The essay have anecdotes, spooked horses, the depot being a social hub.
You can picture people gathering there, waiting for the train, catching up on news.
Totally. It defined the edge of town, probably made people dream bigger, but then eventually rail travel declined.
And the depot closed, the end of an era.
Just the old railroad bed left as a reminder. A familiar story for many small towns, the shift away from rail makes you reflect on how transport shapes a place.
For sure. Another vital link was the post office, right? Essay 9. The post office that linked the hill.
Absolutely crucial. Before phones were common, before the internet, the post office was the connection. Letters from soldiers, catalogs, news from family.
It's listed as one of 9 core institutions in the scrapbook. That says a lot.
It really does. And it wasn't just for mail. It was a community hub. The postmaster, or postmistress, they knew everyone, heard all the news, part confidant, part local historian.
A really central figure. And the post office itself has lasted, hasn't it? Outlived many other things.
Quite remarkable. Its endurance. Okay, how about money? Essay 12. The bank, when Fountain Hill carried its own money.
They had their own bank. For how long?
It seems like it was relatively brief, probably the 1910s, maybe into the 20s. But having a bank, even for a while, was a big symbol.
Yeah, signifies commerce, stability, permanence.
Exactly. People could do their business right there in town. But then, the Great Depression.
And the bank closed.
That's the story. A big blow, you imagine. Not just financially, but psychologically. Suddenly more dependent on banks elsewhere.
A loss of that local control. I bet people talked about when the bank was still open for a long time.
A definite marker in the town's memory. Now, another business landmark. Essay 24. Mears, Bledsoe, in the corner that held the town together.
Oh.
A general store.
Sounds like it. Mears and Bledsoe. There's a photo from the grand opening in 1914 with lots of local bigwigs.
Right. Shows it was important from the start. And I like the post office. It was more than just a store. It was a nerve center.
Where you'd hear the news, catch up on gossip.
Find out what was really going on. Yeah. The Mears and Bledsoe families themselves were influential, too. The store was just central to that close-knit community feel.
Okay, let's circle back to schools one more time, but a different one. Essay 15. The Gardner School. A hill outside the hill.
Right. Gardner was one of those smaller, outlying schools. Just 2 teachers. Served the families living further out in the country.
A real lifeline for those kids, giving them access to education they might not otherwise have had.
Definitely. Records are scarce, sadly, but Leroy Deckelman tried to document some of the later graduates, which is valuable work.
So this was one of the schools that eventually consolidated into Fountain Hill.
Yes, exactly. Its story offers a glimpse into what life was like for students in those more isolated rural pockets before consolidation. Worth remembering those distinct experiences.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about where the stories end, in a way. Essay 10. The cemeteries where the town still speaks.
Cemeteries tell such a unique story, don't they? In Fountain Hill, the essay notes mostly simpler markers, not grand monuments. Lots of familiar family names you see elsewhere in school records, church records.
Shows those deep family roots. But it also mentions unmarked graves.
Yes, particularly in early African-American cemeteries. A sad reflection of historical inequities and whose lives were formally recorded and remembered.
It's good that volunteers work to catalog graves later on.
Definitely. Trying to piece together a fuller picture, and that ties into Essay 18, about Decoration Day.
Decoration Day, cleaning the graves, remembering the names. This was a local tradition even before Memorial Day became a federal holiday.
That's right, deeply rooted in the community.
Right.
It wasn't just about decorating, it was hard work cleaning the grounds, tending the graves. Stewardship.
A physical act of remembrance.
Exactly. And Frank Denson, the scrapbook compiler, apparently did a lot to record cemetery history too. Decoration Day was this big gathering, memory, stories, community, respect for those who came before. A really powerful tradition for you to consider.
Very powerful. Okay, another foundational element, Essay 11, the church's souls, songs, and sawdust trails.
Churches were clearly there from the very beginning in Fountain Hill. Huge anchors for the community.
More than just Sunday service, social centers, organizers.
Cultural hubs, definitely. The essay mentions different denominations coming and going, buildings changing. Remember the Methodist church housing students after a fire.
Right, shows that cooperation. And Eden Baptist using bricks from the old school.
Another great connection. And it highlights the vital role of black churches too. Even if their history wasn't always well documented back then, church was just woven into the fabric of life.
Clearly. Now, jumping ahead again to a more modern, complex issue, Essay 23. After integration, the deal that shaped school grounds.
Yeah, this one looks at the post-integration period, specifically a land deal involving Block 14 of the school property.
Block 14 had been part of the black school property.
That's what the essay describes. There was some kind of trade involving that land after the schools integrated. It was quiet, maybe not widely known.
But symbolic, and it affected how the school grounds were laid out later.
Exactly. It shows how these big societal changes played out in very specific local ways, sometimes through things like land transactions. Adds another layer to the history of that place. A complex part of the story for you to understand.
It certainly is. Okay, we're nearing the end of the essays. Number 21, the little school that could Fountain Hill's academic triumph. This sounds amazing.
It really is. In 1998, Fountain Hill ranked 4th out of 39 schools in South Arkansas on the Stanford Achievement Test.
4th place. That's incredible for a small school, competing against bigger, probably wealthier districts.
Right. The essay puts it down to dedicated teachers, family expectations, that strong community pride we've been talking about, that fierce local loyalty.
Like all that history, that grit, paid off academically too.
Seems like it. In this case, the standardized test actually told a really positive story about the school's heart and effort. Just fantastic.
A really uplifting note. And finally, Essay 25. From the Hill to Jerome Howe, one name crossed the county line.
A lovely little closing piece. It explains that the town of Jerome over in Drew County was named by someone from Fountain Hill.
Oh, really? After who?
Likely after Jerome Denson. Another Denson connection. It was common back then to name new places after people.
That's charming. It's like Fountain Hill's influence spread, even just through a name.
Exactly. A nice reminder that even small places, small communities, have ripples that extend outwards. People carry those connections with them.
What a great way to round out the collection.
So looking back at all these essays from Frank Denson's scrapbook, this deep dive facilitated by K. Brad Barfield in Ashley County, wow, you get such a rich sense of this place. From the Densons arriving in 1842, through building schools, facing challenges like the flu or the Depression, the triumphs on the basketball court, the quiet work of the librarian. It's all there.
It really is. And it just drives home how valuable these personal collections, these scrapbooks are. They capture the texture of life in a way official records often miss.
Absolutely. I mean, goats on the second floor.
Right. Or the girl catching the football in practice. Those details stick with you. And that little school beating the odds on those tests, it's inspiring.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What stories are tucked away in your community's past? In old family albums? Or maybe in the local historical society archives?
Yeah. Maybe hidden in plain sight. Things waiting for someone to piece them together.
Those seemingly small details often make up the biggest, most meaningful stories. It's definitely something for you to think about exploring in your own backyard.
And if you want to read these Fountain Hill essays yourself, remember K. Brad Barfield and Ashley County Now are posting them daily on their Facebook page. Go check them out for the full picture.
Definitely worth doing.
Well, this has been a fascinating exploration. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us into the Fountain Hill Scrapbook.